Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop. Whew. If you only knew what goes on behind the scenes. I've been out here for an hour and a half and couldn't, it's one of those mornings where not one thing would cooperate. Oh, I couldn't get the phone to let me get the files off of it. It would not work. I tried everything I knew how to do, and I thought, what is wrong with this thing? It should just work. I spent 20 minutes trying to get files off that phone, and then I thought, I'll power it off and power it back on. I should have done that earlier, but anyway, that fixed it. Once I powered it off, powered it back on. Oh my gosh. Tea. Iced tea. Sweet iced tea. Oh my goodness. Well, we've already got 33 viewers. That's a good thing. That's the first thing that's gone well. And then I, was putting things together just for the show here, and, just if it could, it did. That's all I can tell you. I think we got some good questions this morning that came up from the video yesterday, and we can talk about almost all of those. I think I can talk about almost all of those intelligently, where some of these questions come up that it's like, I'm not too sharp on some of that stuff. Anyway, before we get into that, I'll just tell you that, I think I left you hanging on the Bobcat that I had another track off. Well, I went back there and I put that track on, no problem at all. It wasn't a big deal. Cut for another couple hours on trails and things. Was cutting the very last trail, got up there, did all that, and was turning around to come back to the house. And yeah, I threw another track right when I'm coming back. And this one was really a hard one to fix. I mean, it was actually just the one little pulley, so it should have been easy. And I got that pulley on, no problem. But I didn't realize, and I pumped it full of grease and tightened it up. I didn't realize the front had also come off somehow. Now, I don't know if it had come off ahead of time or when I put the little one on. It doesn't matter, but it was a monster getting that front one back on. Oh my gosh. But I got it, and I parked that sucker after I got it out. And man, that's 3 tracks in a row, and I've never really ever had that problem before. I think it was just the fact that I was cutting trails, and our trails are on hillsides, and there's rocks, and there's stumps, and anyway, it wasn't fun. We got 93 already. Just because I can tell you, I will tell you, on the ponds, I bought some fish food and I started throwing that out. Not getting a whole lot of response yet, although I am starting to see the fish coming to the surface a little bit. The fish food works the best for catfish, and there are a few catfish in the front pond. In the back pond, we've ordered some for that. Well, we don't have them in there yet. But this food I'm throwing out is supposed to feed all the different fish. So anyway, they are hitting it a little bit, but haven't got real excited about it yet. Okay, well, it looks like we're ready to get right into it here. My son, he has his own channel about homestead horsemanship, and I've encouraged a number of you to go over there and subscribe to his channel. There is a link to one of his videos in my description of this video, so again, I would appreciate it if you'd go over there and check him out. In the meanwhile, they got back from the World Championships down in Ava, Missouri. It wasn't this, I guess it was this past weekend. Yeah. Anyway, it's a big deal. It's a big showgrounds, lots of horses, and here's how they did.
Song about a horse or two. Well, here's one more, and I swear it's true. The finest horse you've ever seen. His name was
Well, I don't know if you lost the music to it, but I did. I don't know how. That was one of the things I was putting together and got finished within the last 3 minutes before we went live. So I don't know where that music went or what happened to it, but like I said, if it could, it would. It appears like we're still live, and I still see people out there, and the comments are still scrolling up, so I assume everything's still okay. Yeah. By the way, on those photographs, if you were reading the verbiage, reserve basically means second place. So second in the world is world championship. Obviously world champion means first place, but reserve means second. And they did really well. And Becca, she wants to be a professional trainer, and she showed in the open class against professionals and got third. And that's pretty good. And she was the youngest to ever do that. So that was pretty cool. So they did really well, and I would encourage you to watch their channel if you could, and even if you don't want to watch it, go over and subscribe. It helps them out just by having the number of subscriptions. Okay, I think that's the end of all the stuff. Now we're ready to get into the meat. And before we get into that, I'll just say if you have questions, post them over here in the comments, and be sure to put question marks in front of your question, because I'm a very poor reader. It takes me forever to read these things, and if I see the question marks in front, I'll know where to start. Looks like Caleb Mills is out there. In fact, I'm glad he's there. His ears probably are burning, because I was going to actually have to talk about him in one of the questions that's being asked here. So hello, Caleb. All right, so the first question that I have here, how do you adjust the saddle position on a resonator guitar? You guys ask tough questions. Well, I don't guess you really can. I mean, they're stuck in the middle there. So how do you affect the intonation on an instrument like that? Well, your intonation on an instrument like that, since in effect it's fretless because your strings are way above the neck, your intonation is in your left hand on that bar. That's your intonation. So it's kind of like a violin. There is no black and white, absolute, perfect position for your bridge. I mean, a lot of people will tell you there is, but literally you can put the bridge pretty much anywhere you want to put it on the top of the violin. Now, I know that's not the right thing to do, but I'm just saying, theoretically, you could do that. You could put the bridge anywhere you wanted to on a violin and learn to play it and learn to intonate it, because you don't have frets and you just have to use your ear to intonate it. And that's the way a dobro is played. So you don't really change the intonation on a dobro. It's whatever length it is, that's your intonation, and your ear is your intonator. Now, granted, you've got frets down there to help you with place markers to help you with that, but your ear is still the intonation. That's my story, that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. I'm not a dobro player, or a resonator guitar player, so there you go. Now, you said resonator guitar, so maybe you're talking about playing it regular. Well, in that case, you're just, what do they say, SOL? Because you can't really adjust the intonation because you can't adjust it. But if you're playing it like a dobro, your bar is your intonation. So that's all I got to say about it. The only other way you could possibly affect it or change it would be, realistically, would be your neck. I mean, assuming your neck is in the proper position, you could literally slide the fretboard forward or backward to the proper intonation. And that's as good as close as you could get it. In other words, you'd have to take the fretboard loose and find a method to set the fretboard in the perfect place to affect your intonation. That's the only other way I can think of to do it. You guys ask really hard questions. On a sad note, someone asked me to send out prayers for Terry Shelton and Craig McCarter. Their son, Paul, recently died. And so I already said my prayers for them, and very sorry to hear that. Can you, the next question is, can you cut a dovetail with a handsaw? And of course you can do that. The question is, you said can. Well, that would depend on your ability. I would say you may cut one if you would like to cut one, but whether you can or not, that's up to you. So yeah, you can do anything you set your mind to, and you know it's kind of like I always say, you sneak up on it. I don't try to, you know, like if I was going to cut it by hand, I sure wouldn't try to cut it to the final exact dimensions. I would cut it, I don't know what the right term is, but cut it so that you got plenty of wood to remove still. In other words, you know, leave your lines and then shave your lines off with a chisel. That's how I would do it if I was doing it totally by hand. And then hand fit it with my carbon paper method that you've seen in some of my videos, which is what I did on this one, and we'll talk about that here in a minute too. I guess I could have talked about all this stuff before I got into the actual questions, but I guess I'll go through these questions, then I'll talk about this stuff. Again, I didn't have any extra time this morning to really write out my outline. Oh my gosh, I was down to the last minute. All right, so the next one, why do I put wings on the peg head of a guitar that I'm building? Well, you know, there's no mystery there. I put the wings on there just because I need to make it to a full-size peg head, you know, and you're saying, the question was, well, the peg head's only 3 inches. I don't need to put wings. Well, then you don't need to put wings. If you're building yours and your wood is wide enough, I am just putting the wings on there because my wood is not wide enough. It's that simple. There's no mystery to it at all. I build my necks laminated or plywood, which is really the proper term, in my opinion. My necks are plywood necks, in other words, multi-plies of wood that I'm putting together to build the neck out. And when I'm done with that, it's just a straight line like this, so the peg head has no flare. So I put the wings on there to help the peg head flare out to the full, whatever it is, 3-inch wide, whatever the peg head width is. So that's all there is to it. There's no mystery to that at all. Let's see. What size is my favorite finger plane? Well, for all these years, it's been 10 millimeter until someone sent me this 8 millimeter. I really like this little tiny plane. It's so easy to push. It's so easy to control. You can get it into such tight places. Now, I haven't actually carved a whole top or back with it for a mandolin, so it might get a little tedious there. It might be a little too small, but the 10 millimeter is a very good all-around plane. If you can only afford one, I'd probably go with 10 millimeter, but if you've got the option to add a second one, this 8 millimeter is sweet. I'm telling you, I really like it. And someone recently sent me the 6 millimeter, and I have already used this a time or two too. Now, this is really tiny. The blade's really long, but the footprint is very small. The blade is also very narrow, as you can see. But the 6 millimeter, I think, is more specialty work. It's a little bit too small for your normal average work, but it works great when you get into a really tight place. So I love the 6 millimeter too. But for all around use, 10 millimeter, I don't think you could hardly beat it. And this 8 millimeter is really sweet. Okay. What blade do I use in my tool that I made for the bridges? And I laid that out here, and it was right here where I could see it a minute ago. Where did that go? I laid it right here. Isn't that crazy? Well, my absent-minded me put it back in the box. I must have saw it laying there. And This is also a 10 millimeter blade. Because I have several 10 millimeter planes, I have one with a tooth. I keep one with the tooth blade in here all the time, and I keep one with a smooth blade in here all the time. And so I took the smooth blade out of the one that has the teeth in it, and I just put the smooth blade in here. So this is a 10 millimeter blade. I don't think that matters too much. What I like about this blade is just that it's got the it's got the curve to it, and it's rounded on the bottom. So like you can get in and pick get in and pick out detail real easy without affecting the wood itself. Where like just a standard flat chisel would work. But the problem with the standard flat chisel is that the corners are sharp and you can gouge and things. And this really keeps you from gouging. That's why I like this. Now, what you could do is just take a standard flat chisel and just grind a round profile into it like this and kind of round the bottom off. It'd be no different, really. I could have done that too. But since I had this and I just took a block of aluminum and just sawed a slot in it and stuck it in there. I like to make stuff anyway and machine stuff, so that's what I did. You could really do it with just a straight chisel and just round it off to make it a little more versatile tool for cleaning up the varnish and finish off of the bridge area. Okay, enough on that. Someone asked about my method for cutting cleats, and then I guess that would also go into size and shape, etc. Well, to me, there's a couple of schools of thought on cleats. A lot of people like the diamonds, and diamonds are okay. I don't have anything really against a diamond. I mean, they look the best, but it boils down to, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to make it solid, which is the reason to put a cleat in, or are you trying to make it look good? If it's a place where the cleat's not going to be seen that much, I would for sure do a rectangular cleat. Now, I just had a fellow in here the other day, and I was getting ready to put a rectangular cleat in there. I want a diamond cleat. Oh, okay, fine, I'll put a diamond cleat in there. That's what you want, that's what I'll put in there. But if I'm putting it in there for holding, and that's the reason I was doing that cleat, then I would put in a rectangular one. They're going to be stronger. So that's the first issue. Do you want diamond or rectangular? Well, for me, if it's not going to be seen, I'm going to put in a rectangular cleat, and it's going to be way stronger, way stronger. And if strength is important, then rectangular is important. So that's the first thing. So how do I actually cut them? If I'm cutting them rectangular, I just cut me a long strip, the width that I want, whatever that width is. And I'll tell you, 10 millimeters is not a bad width. Somewhere in that range, ½ inch, 10 millimeters, somewhere in that range is a good width for a cleat. And then the lengthwise, I don't know. I never really had any particular length in mind. I kind of fit it to the situation. Maybe have 4 or 5 millimeters on each side of the. A couple. I don't know. I would say probably close to a ½ inch on either side of the crack would be pretty close to what I do. I kind of do everything like that by eye. There's no black and white measurement. That's just the truth of it. And but if it needs to be strong, I would make it rectangular, and I'd make sure you got enough on each side to get it where you can really make it hold well. And then I would also bevel the outside edges. And whether it's a diamond or a rectangular one, I bevel them. And that is just a looks thing, but it's also, it keeps them from getting knocked off if something bumps them, hits them, or whatever. Like if you're putting a tool in there or something and you hit the edge, if it's a square edge, you'll knock it off a lot easier than you will if it's got a bevel to it. And it just looks good too. So the looks is the main reason for the bevel. Let's see. By the way, how do I cut them? Well, I typically cut them on the bandsaw, but like I said, I make a long strip and then just cut them across. But if I'm making them on the diamond shape, well, then the best way for me to make them now with a diamond is the laser cutter. And I just use the laser cutter. That's how I cut the last one for that fellow that wanted a diamond one. Again, you know, you could easily cut those by hand by just drawing out a diamond and using a little razor saw or something and sawing them out. Or do it on the bandsaw. And then, you know, I would clean them up with a file or a rasp, something like that. Removing glue from a guitar with using a plastic deal. Now, I was going to get that out ahead of time. Again, I ran out of time here because I was hurting with all the problems that I was encountering. Let me see if I can find something here. Quite often, and I'm not kidding about this, quite often I just use a pick to remove glue, because a pick won't scratch your surface. So if you can, you know, if you might even have to sharpen the edge of the pick a little bit with a file or sandpaper or something, and you can just get in there, and you'd be surprised, a pick will take a lot of glue off without scratching your surface. It depends on the glue, depends how well it's stuck and all that kind of thing. So sometimes this will not work, but sometimes it will. So it's something to try at least. The ones that one of my viewers sent me, I've got one here in this little box, if I can get it out without cutting my fingers all to pieces, because I got a bunch of spare razor blades in this box also. Anyway, is like this. Now these are made commercially. I don't know the name or the brand of these right now, but you can actually buy these online. I would assume you could search for plastic razor blade or something like that, and you'd probably find them. I haven't looked them up, but someone sent me a box of these, and it's really nice. So I use these sometimes now too. But like I said, if you don't have those, that works pretty good. Let's see. The last one I think I have from the comments yesterday was, how do I convert a belt or disc sander to a thickness sander? And this is where Caleb comes in. Caleb did that on his channel, and I would recommend you go over to his channel and look at it. It's Caleb Mills Guitars. He's got a comment in the comments section there. And I think he said in his video that he got the plans for making his thickness sander from Stumac, I think. I think that's what he said. But Caleb can put that in the comments here now, and you'll see it. And he'll tell you more about it, and he can maybe tell you which video of his to go look at. But that's what I would recommend. Yeah, you can easily make or convert a belt or disc sander into a thickness sander. You might actually be better off. I think Caleb converted a spindle sander to a thickness sander. So I would recommend probably using a spindle sander for that, but I could see ways of converting the others to a thickness sander also. So now that I think about it, I'm 90% sure his was a spindle sander, not a belt or disc. But I could still see how you could do it. It might not be as easy, and you might run into some issues. For instance, on the disc sander part, you know, on one direction it's pulling down, but when you slide through on the other direction, it's lifting up. So you got an issue there to think about, and you might want to find a way to get around that. And then the same way with your belt sander. If your belt sander was one of those that could turn up and be, what do you call it? I don't know, in the vertical plane anyway. If it could run in the vertical plane, I could see easily how you could make a thickness sander. You could probably still get it done on the horizontal plane too, but it'd be easier if it was standing up, I think. Anyway, that's about it on that. I don't have any specific knowledge on that because I didn't do it, but Caleb did, and he can tell you more about that. Let's see, I think that's it. Let me talk about what's on my table here. First of all, I say thank you to Richard Reisner. He's been watching the channel for many years, and his note just says, hope you can use these, and it's a whole bunch of deer antler, as you can see, and it's almost all bases. In other words, this was the part attached to the head, and these are sheds. For the most part, these are sheds. I think a few have, I can see a few have been sawn off, but for the most part, these are sheds. And anyway, you can, you know, if you wanted to send me some, as long as it's at least 3 inches long or at least 70 millimeters, 7 centimeters, whatever the preferred word is there in the millimeter land. As long as they're, you know, 70 millimeters or so and 3 inches or so, then you could just saw them off like this and send me the base, because the bases are the main thing I need. But anyway, he sent a bunch of them, and it's pretty heavy. So thank you very, very much. This will take me a long way. I appreciate it very much. So that's the first thing. And I think I only have one other thing now, and that would be this guitar. You've been seeing me work on this HD28. Well, it took me a while yesterday to get that neck angle set just right to the new bridge, but I got her set. Now you can see the new bridge has no holes, it has no slot, and that's intentional because I didn't really know where I want to put them. And you know, I want to set the intonation first and get that marked and get that cut, and then I'll put the holes in a place where it won't interfere, because I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to cut it yet. Yeah, I could have pre-cut it and put it, but then I might not have been able to cover up the scar perfectly. This is one of those Martins that had the bridge in the wrong place. I had to move the bridge back originally, like 15 years ago. I moved the bridge back about a full 1/8 of an inch. It was a long ways off. And there was a big scar here in front, and I'm working presently to, you know, I made the bridge a little bigger, so that helped cover some of the scar, and then I'm also working on the finish now to try to improve the scarring even more. But I do have the neck angle set now, so that if you slide this back, it does clear the bridge, as you can see. It doesn't clear it by a lot. It only clears it by about 30 thousandths, 20 thousandths, somewhere in there. But at least it clears it. And because I have a taller bridge on it now, we should be good to go. And if we have to cut the bridge down a hair, that's no problem, because there's a lot of extra bridge there compared to the one that was on it originally, which was really thin. So we're in good shape. I think let me look on my list here, and let me look down here. I think I've covered everything else I was going to cover, so let's go to the comments. Let me scroll up to the top and see if I've missed any. And bear with me, because like I said, it takes me a few seconds to read these things. Okay, here's the first question marks I see. David Lane, thanks so much for prayers. You are welcome. I'm very sorry to hear about your loss there. That's a terrible thing. Let's see. Next question. Rick Carver says, do you like speed necks? What is your process for doing them? See, I don't claim to be the know-it-all on everything in speed necks. I don't know. I've heard the term. I don't know anything about them. So I can't give you a process. The only speed neck I have is I take the finish off the neck. That turns it into a speed neck for me. I don't like finish on my necks. It slides much faster that way. Now, let me tell you the shortcut to that. If you want a speed neck without removing the finish, just put baby powder on your hand, and it's slicker than snot on a doorknob then. So there you go. Michael Burkmeyer, can you explain why you put wings on your headstock? Well, I did that already. And it's not a mystery. It's just because my wood's too narrow, so I have to make the headstock wider. Mike Saba, what do you think of 5-string violins? I see more players using them. Well, I don't think too much one way or the other, and I mean, I certainly can appreciate the skill of those folks that can play them. My problem with violins is I can't even play a 4-string one. No, I see people playing those more and more all the time, the 5-strings. I know what you're saying, but like I said, I have enough trouble with 4-strings on a violin. So, but I think it's pretty cool. Now, I did build a quote-unquote equivalent mandolin to that for Carmine D'Amico. I built him a 10-string mandolin, which is adding the 5th string on a violin is the same thing. So you're putting a low C on there is what you're doing. And that's what Carmine D'Amico wanted. He wanted a mandolin with a low C. And I said, okay, if that's what you want. But, it presents a lot of problems. First of all, you're making a much wider neck. Second of all, they don't make 10-string tuners for mandolins that I'm aware of. Now, they must make them somewhere because they've had tipples out forever, and tipples sometimes are 10-string, sometimes they're 12-string, I think. I don't even know. I'm not a tipple expert, so don't jump on me on that. But anyway, the point is, what I did was, when I put the 5th string, the 5th pair, I guess you'd say, on the mandolin, I bought 2 sets of tuning keys, cut 3 off the top of each of them, and cut 2 off the bottom of the other pair, and then stuck them together, and that's how I did it. And I cut it with such a fine line that when you stuck them together, when you look at the back of the peg head, unless you're looking close, you don't even notice that they've been cut in 2. So that's how I did it. Yeah, not simple. And making a 10-string mandolin, that's not simple either. But Carmine absolutely loved his mandolin. And I've told this before on the channel, and it's 100% true. For the first almost 2 years, he called me every single week and told me how much he loved that mandolin. And he would tell me who he's playing it with. Like, I'm in the studio this week with Barbra Streisand, and I'm in the studio with whatever, just all these big names that you've heard your whole life, And he was playing that thing. I think Carmine had won something like 24 Grammys or something, I don't know, for his playing ability on records and things. Anyway, let's see. Moving on here, I'll see if I can. Marcus Dressen guitar. Did you ever injure yourself seriously while working on an instrument? All those razor sharp tools and really dangerous. Yeah, he says he cuts himself regularly. Trying to think about that. I'm sure I've had some fairly good cuts. I don't think I've ever had anything requiring stitches or anything like that. Trying to think of my worst injury period. It's probably just been cuts. I really haven't had too many injuries. I know it sounds kind of like lip service or maybe self-serving to say things like this, but I seriously do try to think about every single operation I'm about ready to do and what's going to hurt me. I seriously think that way. When I start on the bandsaw, I do things that I know are dangerous, but I think that's why I'm careful, and I think that's why I don't get hurt, is because I know they're dangerous, and so I really pay attention, And, things can get jerked out of your hand, and I try to think about that, and I think, if this gets jerked out of my hand, how am I going to keep my hands away from that blade? That kind of thing. That's the kind of thinking I do. And of course, I try to mitigate it so it can't jerk it out of my hand to begin with. But if it does, I try to know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to handle it. Just like the worst shop accident I can remember was on the table saw, and a piece of wood went flying across and stuck into the 1/2 inch thick You know, this OSB board that's on the wall. Well, it was in my other shop, but it went flying across about 10 feet of space and stuck just like an arrow right through that wall. But I knew it could do that, so I was out of the way, and I truly did know it ahead of time. It wasn't like I just got lucky. I knew that it could do that. Nowadays, I'm smarter that I won't even let that happen, but I wasn't smarter then. So that's the truth of it. But that's probably the worst thing that's actually happened in the shop. Well, aside from creating an actual problem on an instrument, that's the worst thing that's happened. And I have created a few problems over the years, but there you go. You have to fix them, you know. I think people saw the one where I dropped the vacuum head on that mandolin and cracked it lightly. Oh, that just like killed me. It just happened, you know. Didn't mean for it to happen, obviously, but I showed it so that you'd know that I don't not show things like that. Okay, so let me move on. Joseph O'Brien in Tara, Ireland, playing mandolin in ukulele group. Thinking of making a mandolin, but shape it like a ukulele. Will it sound okay? Yeah. It'll have its own sound, you know. It'll probably sound a lot more like your A style with the oval hole, or F style with the oval hole. It'll just sound like a mandolin with an oval hole, I would imagine. It might have a little bit unique sound even to that, but I would think it'd be just fine. I think your biggest challenge, if you actually make it like a ukulele, will be getting it to be strong enough, because if you have a flat top, you're talking about a lot of torque on that top, so with 8 strings. So keep that in mind. Make sure you either brace it correctly or tie the strings off to the tailpiece rather than to the bridge like a uke would do. It ain't gonna hold. That's why those Ovation mandolins failed, because they were tied to the bridge. Yeah, it's in most of those, at least the ones that I've seen, most of the ones tied to the bridge itself have failed, at least the ones that I've seen. So I wouldn't tie it to the bridge. I would tie it to the tailpiece, make it look like a uke, but handle it more like a regular mandolin, because there's a reason that they're handled the way they're handled. And I would also brace that flat top a little bit more, because you're going to get pushed down quite a bit with those 8 strings. But good luck to you on it. I'm sure somebody's probably already done it. And pretty much everything you can imagine on instruments has already been done. I mean, it would be pretty unique if you came up with something unique. Let's see, Mark dressing guitar again. Did you let a doctor check your blood because of recent? Yes, that was all checked out. Everything looked good. Had all kinds of blood tests. I'm still going back for an echocardiograph. I guess that's what you call it. Anyway, I'm still going back for that at the end of this month. That's the earliest they can get me in. So if I had a serious heart problem, I'd be dead already. No, I don't think there's any problem with the heart. I really don't. I never did feel like that was the issue. I felt like it was something else. Now, they did do the tick-borne check on that blood stuff too, and that didn't show up either. So I don't know what caused the episode. I still think it was something to do with ticks, because I like I said, I found one tick that had been on there. It probably was on there a week. Several days for sure, if not a week. And they claim that's when you're at risk for tick problems, is when they've been on there a while. If you get them off in under 24 hours, what I understand is you're much less likely to have a tick-borne disease. None of the tick diseases showed up as far as I know. Anyway, so I don't really know what caused it for sure. Let's see, looking for more question marks. Larry Fisher, Jerry, I sanded through the first ply of my mahogany on the side of my kit mandolin. Can I route out with a Dremel the spot and inlay some? Well, Larry, I think that's a tough fix. I don't think there's a whole lot you're going to do there to make it look like it didn't happen. At least I can't imagine making that fix so you can't tell it. But yeah, you're on the right track there. I mean, if you want to replace it with some other veneer, or even a solid, even if you route a hole and put a whole solid slug in there. If you do choose that option, if you do decide to make it a hole and put a plug of solid wood in there, what I would do is make sure that your hole is beveled all the way around. So you have a bevel on your hole all the way around, and that way and then bevel your patch that you're putting in there, and then when you put them down in there, the bevels give you more surface area, number one, and number two, it keeps it from pushing through so it can't fall through the hole. But I would definitely bevel it if you're going to do that and fix it. That's your best way. And even if you're just doing a surface patch, it's still better to bevel it, because your surface patch, then the tighter you press it, the tighter it fills in the crack. So anytime you're patching something like that, a bevel is a good approach. As long as you get it fitting pretty tightly, you understand. But a bevel is probably the way I would go, and good luck to you on it. I hope it works out for you. Okay, I apologize in advance asks, what is your technique for removing the finish on a neck? Mine's pretty straightforward. It's brutal as heck, especially if you're the one watching and it's your neck. But I just take a scraper and I just scrape the finish off. Now, one of the reasons I do it that way is because it's fast, it's accurate, and you can do it well without really affecting the wood underneath if you know how to use a scraper. But even more importantly is when you get into tight places, like right up against the neck heel here, like you can reach in and you can grab and pull back and, scrape it off without, like sanding and stuff is such a pain. Scraping, if you learn how to use a scraper, it's your friend. But you do need to learn how to use a scraper. It's not totally intuitive. The way, again, I've told this many times on the channel, I sharpen my scrapers different than cabinet guys do on their scrapers. A cabinet scraper typically is flat on the edge, and then they burnish those edges over a little bit. And that works. It's okay. But if you really want a really sharp scraper and you want to use it on instruments, my recommendation is the way I learned from the old violin maker guy that I visited his shop when I first started. And what he does is he bevels one edge just kind of like a knife edge, and he sharpens it just like a knife and gets it pretty much razor sharp where you can shave hair with it. And then you burnish that sharp edge over. And now you've got a hook there that will really cut. And that's the way I do mine. I know that's not the norm, but that's the way I do mine. Okay, so hopefully that'll help you. That's how I do it. Again, not everything I do is the best way to do it. That's just how I do it. I see Danny ask a question here, but there's no question marks in front of it, but I just happened to see it. Danny Fisher says, good morning, Jerry. Would you be interested in making me a rim for my banjo? I will be fitting it to a Tennessee 20-tone ring. Thank you, my friend. Well, probably not. I mean, I could probably do it, no problem. I don't think that'd be the issue. I don't know. I'll do anything anybody wants to pay me to do as long as you bring it here. If you walk through the door with it, I mean, but it's not something that I would seek out. But I could build that. I mean, if that was something you wanted done. But I don't. Things like that everything has to be here because it has to be fit custom. I'm not going to try to build it to somebody's measurements that they give me over the phone, or send me via email. I'm not going to build anything like that to measurements. The parts have to be here. All the things have to be here that I can fit it up. So anyway, that would be the problem. So you'd have to bring it here if you wanted me to do something like that. Let's see. The next question I see was from Larry. I can't pronounce that last name, Larry. Sorry. Baziw. I have a bolt-on neck guitar. The guitar top has come loose from block where neck attaches. What tool would you use to scrape out the gap between the block and before regluing? Well, almost any flat square edge tool. Like, in other words, what I do is most of the time is I just take a X-Acto blade with the square back edge, like, in other words, you got your sharp side of the blade, but then the back side is usually square and kind of sharp too, kind of sharp also. And I just take that flat edge and scrape through there, and that works pretty good. It may not be long enough for your needs, and if that's the case, you'll have to come up with something else that's a little longer that does basically the same thing. But, oh, sorry, I got a Charlie. It's not easy being me. Oh my gosh, got to be careful how I said. That really hurt. Okay. I noticed Caleb made a note there. Yeah, he used a spindle sander, he says, but the StewMac one is actually for a drill press. And I think I remember that now too. Yeah, the drum sander for a drill press, you could turn that into a thickness sander. So that's probably your cheapest way to go. Yeah, thanks Caleb for mentioning that. Let's see. The next one is the dirty knobs. Do you offer refinishing for solid body guitars? I am not a finish expert, so I really don't like to take on finish jobs. I will do them if they're carried through the door. I will do them, but I am not the guy. I probably shouldn't be the guy you would bring that to. But if you bring it here, I will do it. I am not a finish expert. I've said it many, many, many times. I get a decent finish, but I'm not a real good finisher. Stephen Smith. Hey Jerry, would you be interested in finishing an electric guitar kit, or maybe Caleb? I would tend to say Caleb on that. If I don't know if Caleb's up for that type of thing or not, but he'd be more into the electric side of the house. I can do those. I'm sure positively I could do one. And I hope I don't offend Caleb, but positively I could do it faster. I'm 99% sure. But I don't really work on electrical instruments, electric instruments. So it would not be something I would pursue. Would I do it if you brought it here? Maybe, probably, I guess. But I really wouldn't want to take that job on if I didn't have to. That's kind of one of those deals. Just trying to be honest with you guys so you know where I stand on that stuff. Because, I do it, but it's just not what I'm in business to do, if you will. I apologize in advance, says, I have never used a scraper. Would you sand or steel wool the finish as an option? Well, sanding will take you 2 years and a day. Steel wool would take you 20 years and a day. So I wouldn't use those options if it was me, but I would use a scraper. And after you use the scraper, then you would use your sandpaper. But that's me. Now, there's always the option. I wouldn't do this. I'm telling you right up front. Hear me say, I would not do this. But there is the option to use a chemical stripper also. The only reason I wouldn't do it is because what it does to your plastic bindings. If you don't have plastic bindings, you're good to go. So there you go. You could use a chemical stripper. Trying to read here. I think we're about out. There's still a few scrolling up here. Jeff Beardmore. If you like mustard, eating some is good for your leg cramps. Okay, well, I can tolerate mustard. I'm not a big fan of it. I do put a little bit on a hot dog or something like that, but only a little bit compared to what most people do. Just a tiny dab and spread it. But you know what? It only takes this much mustard to get all over everything. Mustard is like CA glue. It seems to just run everywhere with me. I don't know why that is. I don't feel like I have that problem with ketchup, but with mustard, I swear I can't put it on anything without it getting everywhere. I don't know why that is. It's just, it must be a personal problem. 137 viewers, so we didn't get near as high as we did last week. Last week we were way up there. Victor B. Jerry, on one of my guitars, I have a slight indentation on the neck due to a faulty capo. Do you think this can be steamed out, or is there another way to fix this? Well, you might be able to do it with steam. I'm not a big fan of steaming anything over a finish because it can result in as many problems as it fixes. You can try it, but just be aware that it could possibly create other problems. And what are the other problems? Well, it could milk the finish. It could turn it milky white. That's one thing. Especially if the steam penetrates like if the finish is cracked and the steam penetrates under there and gets under the finish, it can turn it milky white easily. So it can create problems trying to steam over a finish. Now, I'm the first one to try steaming when it's bare wood, but when it's a finish, not so much. I typically don't. So is there another way to take out a dent? Not too easy, I'll be honest with you. I might possibly fill the dent with a finish, and that takes a long time though. You have to reapply, and then sand it smooth. And even then, you'll probably be able to see it. But you still could try the steam if you want to, and I know some people have been successful with steam, even on a finished surface. I typically just don't do it myself. Let's see. Steve Smith says, gotta go. Have a blessed day. If that's the Steve Smith, I think he's local here in the Rolla area. So, I don't see any more questions. I think we're out. Yeah, the last guy says, I apologize in advance. Says hit the like button. Yeah. That brings up a good point. I really do appreciate it when you hit the like button. I always encourage you to do that. A lot of people tell me, and in fact, I think Steve Smith just coincidentally also just the other day told me that he would hit the like button, but he can't because he's watching it on his television. Well, typically on your television, if you take your remote, there's you usually have a center button, and then there's an up arrow, a side arrow, and a down arrow, that thing. Usually, if you hit the up arrow or the down arrow, either one, it'll pop up a menu on your screen. And then you can right arrow over to the thumbs up, and then click the center button when you get on the thumbs up, and it'll do the thumbs up then. So on a smart TV, you usually can still thumb up a video if you just hit your up arrow and then arrow over and then click on the center button. And that's usually all there is to it. It's not that hard to do. So I really would appreciate it very, very much if you would give the videos a thumbs up. If you know, I don't mean to sound like I'm whining, but if you stop and think about how many hours that I put into putting out videos, and so many of you tell me you really like my videos. From that perspective, the least you can do is click the thumbs up button. So please do it if you can. I know there are situations where you can't, or just something's a reason. But if you can, please do try to click the thumbs up button. I really would appreciate it very much. It changes the algorithm in Google, and it gets the videos out in front of more people. It's just common sense simple again. And the common sense simple side of that is when Google sees lots of people like that particular video, Google goes, we need to send that video out to lots more people. It's just that simple, you know, and so then it gets more. And the more it gets, honestly, the more money I make. And that's just the bottom truth line of it. Am I getting rich? Not hardly. My retirement is completely gone. I'm not crying poor mouth. I'm not whining. I'm just explaining black and white truth of the matter. My retirement is gone. I don't have any retirement at this point. This is my retirement. So you can help me a lot by just simply clicking thumbs up. That's all you got to do. And I'll spend the hour making the video, just click thumbs up. Or the 20 hours making the video. And Emery's actually the one spending the 20 hours now, but I'm paying her to do that. You know, and trust me, some of those videos take forever to produce. Thank you very much, Gary. I really appreciate that. Gary's one of my greatest supporters, Gary Boer. So thank you, Gary. Anyway, I appreciate it. I really do. Anything you can do to help me, if you can pass the word along to other people, get them watching, that kind of thing. Anybody have any last minute questions while I was spouting off there? Let me look and see. It looks like we have a couple. Scott Roberts, are you going to get back to me about getting those two fellow musicians, songwriters from Airplay? Well, Scott, it's kind of up to them. I may go back over there either tonight possibly or tomorrow night, and I'll tell them you mentioned it, and we'll see what we can do. They said they were really interested in coming here and doing some live stuff on YouTube, and that would be really neat if they did that. You guys would love it. I'm telling you, they're good. They're really good. And he's written some songs that are just killer. He goes by Doc Prosser. Prosser is his last name. Doc is what he goes by. I don't really know what his first name is, to be honest with you. Zane Prosser, as I mentioned, was a fellow that was in my uncle's band years and years ago, and Zane had his own band called the Over the Hill Gang. I don't know if any videos exist on Over the Hill Gang out on YouTube. I don't know that I've ever searched for any. But if there are any out there, those guys are good, and good solid bluegrass musicians. You would like them. Let's see. Yeah, Larry says, mustard works good for my cousin, but it's as bad as Antiseize. Now, if you know what Antiseize is, you really raised a good point there. It's exactly the same. In fact, I think Antiseize is the worst. You can't put Antiseize on anything. No, if you don't know what it is, you coat it like a threads of a bolt with Antiseize, and then you screw the bolt in, and that will keep the bolt from ever rusting and getting stuck in the hole. Antiseize is what it is, and it's you can get it in a lot of different ways, but the one I have is a silver color, and I guarantee you cannot put that on anything without getting it all over everything. And I don't care how careful you are, how meticulous you are, it will get on everything. It's crazy. So that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, Antiseize is the worst. It really is. It really is. Let's see. Ray Lemoy says, "Hi Jerry, do you make custom pick guards for archtop guitars?" I could do that. Yeah, I could easily do that. Again, you'd have to bring it all here. I know that technically I could do that via measurements and stuff, but that's just not how I work anymore. I'm not doing anything through the mail anymore, and you know, it's not because I don't want the money or the revenue and all that. First of all, it's mainly because I just can't keep up. That's just the truth of it. If I open that gate back up again, I'm instantly flooded to the point where I can't breathe, and it drove me insane. It was weighing heavy on my mind because I know I got people waiting on me all over the world, and I can't keep up. And so that's why I quit doing it. I just quit doing it. I just could not keep up. And I can barely, well, I can't keep up even with just the stuff carried through the door. So I'm even struggling doing that. So if you brought it here, I would do it. But that's the bottom line. And I would assume you're talking about making it like a raised pick guard out of wood or something like that, out of a fancy wood or something is what I would typically make it out of. I mean, you could make it out of plastic, I guess, too, but if you're going to go to the trouble of making one, you might as well make it out of something really high quality. Allen Aviation, what polish or wax has a very fine abrasive? I have a 1998 Epiphone Broadway that I think would benefit from polish that a lot of surface area needs to. Yeah, well, you could do that with, you can do it, the simplest way is to get you a good car paste wax. Not so much these kind of liquidy car polishes, not those so much, but if you can find still, and I don't even know if they still make it, but a good quality car paste wax, that will work. A good furniture paste wax, maybe not so much on the buffing out part. Really, your semi-chrome, this stuff's hard to beat. There's that other one called Flitz also. Flitz is pretty good too. I mean, Flitz is okay. I prefer the semi-chrome over the Flitz. The Flitz, according to California, according to cancer, where California was caused, Flitz is safer. That's the only difference. This supposedly has some carcinogens or whatever the word is, but it's only in California. So you don't have to worry about it unless you live in California. People have more fun than anybody. I'm just making fun. Don't mean anything by it. But anyway, one of those kinds of polishes works really good for that. You're in for a lot of elbow grease, though. If you're planning to take all that out with polish, you're really in for a lot of elbow grease. So plan on, maybe needing a new elbow by the time you're done. The other option would be to do sandpaper, but like start with like 1,200 and then go up to 2,000 or 3,000, and then top it off with something like that, or top it off with a good paste wax and buff it out. Those are just options. I mean, there's a million ways to do everything, and steel wool is another possible option also. Tim Gray and Doc Prossery. Yeah, that's who I will be playing with. Probably tonight or tomorrow night, one of the two, whenever I decide to go back over there. Yep, that was Scott Roberts asking that. Let's see. We're about out of time, by the way, but I'll answer the last few that I see here. What is pucker factor? I think is what he's trying to say. It says pucker factor. I don't think we have those in Denmark. Yeah, the pucker factor. You're not supposed to make me explain these things. you're sitting on the pucker factor. It's, what was it, another way of putting it, the old brown eye that never winks? That makes you, when you get really tense, it kind of draws up. That's the pucker factor. Oh my gosh. I can't believe you made me explain that. Anyway, David Lane, have you ever made an old Army Navy mandolin like Gibson made? I have an F style. I couldn't loudness. No, I've never made anything like that. The only mandolins I have built from scratch have been F-style mandolins. That's it. I haven't made any other ones. I made that 1 3/4 size F-style mandolin, but other than that, everything else has just been full-size standard F-style mandolins. Well, the 10-string also. So those are the only 2 variations I've ever made. Did you know the Chapmans and are doing some presentations at Winfield, Walnut Valley? It doesn't surprise me. Chapmans are very good, crazy good musicians. They just got something covering that eye there. I'm blinking, sorry. Anyway, yeah, the Chapmans are just killer. I've known John, honestly, since he was 10 years old. And I've told this story on here before too, so I'm sorry to digress again, but I saw John, he was only 10 years old the first time I ever saw him, and he was out on the parking lot by himself picking the fire out of a flat top Martin guitar. I'm like, whoa! I mean, he was just a little kid, you know, and he was just playing Tony Rice, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I had just left a jam with Barry Abernathy and other members of Doyle Lawson's band. I was in a jam with those guys. And when I saw this kid, I said, come here, kid. I almost grabbed him by the collar and drug him down there. And I said, you boys need to hear this kid play. And so he sat in and played with them. I would have had him left after that. But I listened to a tune or two, but whew, man, he could play. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all to hear they're at Winfield like that. Okay, let me move on here. We're running out of time, and I think more questions are scrolling up. You can. Scott says you can find some videos of the Over the Hill Gang band. They're from Missouri, and Zane Prosser used to be their lead singer, and Zane was also in my uncle's band at one time, the Ozark Mountain Trio. Victor B says, magnesium powder mixed with water works great for leg cramps. Mustard is probably good for cramps in hot dogs. Tommy Boucher says, does the saddle of a 12 string is the same as a 6 string? I guess so. I can't think of any real difference. I mean, you know, the only difference I could even conceive of would just be the width of it or something. I mean, like like if you spread your strings out on a 12 string a little bit more or something, that'd be about the length of it would be about the only difference. You want to have a substantial saddle on a 12 string. I mean, you want to use bone or antler or something that's going to hold up. I know that a lot of them are made with plastic, but that would be my last choice, would be plastic or something like that. I would definitely want bone or antler. Otherwise, I'd say it's pretty much the same. At least they've all been the same on the ones I've built. I haven't really thought about making them any different. That's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, being so nice to me, and I really do appreciate it. Do that, okay? I appreciate it very much. Y'all have a great day.